Yeah, I'm going to read it, so please follow. I'm going to read the whole chapter. Ready? When the Lord, your God, brings you into the land that you are entering to take possession of it, and clears away many nations before you, the Hittites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, 7 nations more numerous and mightier than you. And when the Lord your God gives them over to you and you defeat them, then you must devote them to complete destruction. You shall make no covenant with them and show no mercy to them. You shall not intermarry with them, giving your daughters to their sons or taking their daughters for your sons. For they would turn away your sons from following me to serve other gods. Then the anger of the Lord would be kindled against you, and he would destroy you quickly. But thus shall you deal with them. You shall break down their altars and dash in pieces their pillars and chop down their Asherim and burn their carved images with fire. For you are a holy people to the Lord your God. The Lord your God has chosen you to be a people for his treasured possession. Out of all the peoples who are on the face of the earth, it was not because you were more in number than any other people that the Lord set his love on you and chose you, for you were the fewest of all peoples. But it is because the Lord loves you and is keeping the oath that he swore to your fathers, that the Lord has brought you out with a mighty hand and redeemed you from the house of slavery, from the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Know therefore that the Lord your God is God, the faithful God who keeps covenant and steadfast love with those who love him and keep his commandments to 1,000 generations, and repays to their face those who hate him by destroying them. He will not be slack with one who hates him. He will repay him to his face. You shall therefore be careful to do the commandment and the statutes and the rules that I command you today. And because you listen to these rules and keep and do them, the Lord your God will keep with you the covenant and the steadfast love that he swore to your fathers. He will love you, bless you, and multiply you. He will also bless the fruit of your womb and the fruit of your ground, your grain and your wine and your oil, the increase of your herds and the young of your flock in the land that he swore to your fathers to give you. You shall be blessed above all peoples. There shall not be male or female barren among you or among your livestock. And the Lord will take away from you all sickness, and none of the evil diseases of Egypt, which you knew, will he inflict on you. But he will lay them on all who hate you. And you shall consume all the peoples that the Lord your God will give over to you. Your eyes shall not pity them, neither shall you serve their gods, for that will be a snare to you. If you say in your heart, these nations are greater than I, how can I dispossess them? You shall not be afraid of them, but you shall remember what the Lord your God did to Pharaoh and to all Egypt. The great trials that your eyes saw, the signs, the wonders, the mighty hand, and the outstretched arm by which the Lord your God brought you out. So will the Lord your God do to all the peoples of whom you are afraid. Moreover, the Lord your God will send hornets among them until those who are left and hide themselves from you are destroyed. You shall not be in the dread of them, for the Lord your God is in your midst, a great and awesome God. The Lord your God will clear away these nations before you little by little. You may not make an end of them at once, lest the wild beasts grow too numerous for you. But the Lord your God will give them over to you and throw them into great confusion until they are destroyed. And he will give their kings into your hand, and you shall make their name perish from under heaven. no one shall be able to stand against you until you have destroyed them. The carved images of their gods you shall burn with fire. You shall not covet the silver or the gold that is on them, or take it for yourselves, lest you be ensnared by it. For it is an abomination to the Lord your God. And you shall not bring an abominable thing into your house and become devoted to destruction like it. You shall utterly detest and abhor it, for it is devoted to destruction. So it's a challenging passage for us, because I'm sure one of the common objections to the Christian God, or the God of the Old Testament, as some people say, they call the God of the Old Testament a God who is genocidal. And when we read passages like this, it can seem that way. Now, I'm not here to defend God, but I do want to help us understand. Perhaps we are the ones who are misunderstanding when we think like that. Now, there are 5 kind of subpoints that I'm going to take us through, but don't worry, each one is not too long. So the first one is a difficult command, and that's really where I want to spend a bit of time thinking about this notion of completely wiping out a nation. Secondly, the clear and present danger. It's sort of tied into the first one about the reasons why this is. There are 2 reasons. There are 2 reasons why God commands his people to wipe out the nations that they conquer. Number 3, the relationship behind the rules. Often we can talk about the rules a lot. We talk about how far can you go with the rules. But it's always important to focus on the relationship, right, behind the rules. If in your family, it's only the rules that matter and not the relationship, you know that that's not an ideal situation. Number 4, the certainty of hope. And number 5, a little bit of comment on continuity and discontinuity. How much of this passage has continuity and how? And obviously what also is discontinuous. So those are just 5 sort of areas that are going to help us think through some of the things. So the first one is a difficult command and the clear and present danger. The first point is this. There's no way to shy away from it. What God is saying here is pretty black and white. He is telling them, go and defeat them and devote them to complete destruction. And that's actually in contrast to how wars are fought. War is not a game. War is a horrible thing. And even though we are far from war in terms of distance, I think we are noticing how close we are in terms of the geopolitical landscape we live in. And we can see the impact because something over there, right, makes us pay more for petrol. Right? We see the impact of war. But it's not just our wallets that are getting bruised because of war. War is serious. War is not a game. And you can't sugarcoat conflict. And you can't sort of make it, PG. Right? War has violent adult themes. People are out to kill each other. That's the reality. But the difference is there is a concept, even now to some degree, but especially then known as the spoils of war, where the conqueror has the right to claim for themselves the spoils of war. That includes people as servants, that includes animals, that includes food, everything. And when God says you must devote them to complete destructions, what he's saying is these conquests, there will be no spoils for you. Now, there are two reasons why God is saying this. And the first part is this, and it's in the red there. You must devote them to destruction. I didn't realize how I didn't realize it was so clear on the computer, but it's like glaring at me right now, right? Okay, you shall not make no covenant with them and show them no mercy. It's such a difficult thing to understand. But you keep going here, and the reason, number one, is because of the danger of integration. All right? So the first reason why God is telling them to do this is because this is not a war that they go off and fight and come back to their homes. This war is on their home front. This war is taking place in the land that they will inherit. So if they compromise in any way, there's going to be relational integration. Okay? It's easier to make peace sometimes, isn't there? Or some kind of peace, some kind of compromise. And because of that, they are told to not do that. Now, the second reason comes to us from Genesis. This is from Genesis chapter 15. And as the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell on Abram, and behold, dreadful and great darkness fell upon him. Then the Lord said to Abram, know for certain that your offspring will be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and will be servants there, and they will be afflicted 400 years. God is talking about Egypt. But I will bring judgment on the nation that they serve, and afterward they shall come out with great possessions. As for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried in a good old age. And they shall come back here in the fourth generation, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. So Abraham is living in this land that is promised to him. But there's other people living there. And there are other people living there, and their sin is getting worse and worse. And the apex of their sin, the fullness of their wickedness is still to come. So God is saying, this is interesting because a God who knows everything, right? He sees everything. He can see the future. He tells his servant Abraham, in 400 years' time, his children will be massive, and he will use his children to judge the nations at the very place where Abraham is asleep. What's interesting here is that Israel is used as a nation to judge Egypt. So God judges Egypt by rescuing Israel, and then God judges Canaan by using Israel as his form of justice. And we need to be clear, that is not a pattern that is to be reproduced in any way. And if we do misread scripture like that, we can go into all sorts of challenging, strange ideas of Christian deeds of heroic nation conquesting in the name of God. That's not what we're about. Now, that still leaves us with the question. How does that leave? How do you feel about this? How do you feel about God being a God who sees all of these things and chooses to work this way? And this is where we are not the ones in place to judge God, are we? We did not make God. God is the one who made us. So we come into passages that sometimes can be tricky like this. And we think about, does God have the right to do this? And this is where what God is doing here actually shines the light on me and you. Because we think so easily because we don't see judgment so much, right? Because we don't see it, we don't see God just unleashing his judgment all the time, we get accustomed to thinking that God has no right to do it. But what this passage should show us is, if God didn't spare any of us, what God does to these 7 nations, he has every right to do to me and do to you. Such is our own wicked ways. And so rather than thinking about and holding God up to judgment, it causes us to reflect and think, oh my goodness, I'm no better. God has shown so much mercy. That's what he does here. He holds back and rather offers peace through his Son for those who will hear and respond. But the relationship behind the rules, okay? I got to direct it. All right? So, God says, here we are. Verse 6, for you are a holy people, holy to the Lord your God. And the Lord your God has chosen you to be a people for his treasured possession. Out of all the peoples who are on the face of the earth, it was not because you were more in number than any other people that the Lord set his love on you and chose you, for you were the fewest of all peoples. But it is because the Lord loves you and is keeping the oath that he swore to your fathers that the Lord has brought you out with a mighty hand and redeemed you from the house of slavery, from the hand of Pharaoh, king. What is the relationship behind the rules? It's not some arbitrary exercise going on. God is seeing his people as precious to him. He sees his people as precious to him, and he's saying, you I see as my treasure. You I see as my treasured possession. And it wasn't because you were more in number than any other people. Often, to be great, you know the saying, strength in numbers, but even then as well, people took great pride in the size of their nation. And it reflected on the strength of their God. And the irony is that the God of Israel is this strong and amazing God, completely wipes out, right? Can take on all the gods of Egypt. That's the sort of scenario we're seeing. But he chooses Israel. Such a huge and strong and powerful God should have a mighty nation. Surely not. No. This strong and mighty and powerful God loves and cares for the tiny nation of Israel. We want churches to grow, but churches must never feel strength in number. That's a warning for churches. We should always have strength in Jesus, not strength in numbers. Number 4. This is the first and last time I'm going to do the clicking, right? The certainty of hope. Okay. Now, that's all well and good, but they need assurances. God says to them, if you say in your heart, these nations are greater than I, how can I dispossess them? Okay, so they get there and they just realize the reality. They're bigger. They have more people. God says, you shall not be afraid of them, but you shall remember what the Lord your God did to Pharaoh and to all Egypt. So what are they supposed to do? They need to recall and remember God's faithfulness and mighty act before. Looking back helps them stay grounded into the present and into the future. The final part has 3 short points, and we've covered all of these kind of already: continuity and discontinuity. Okay. So point A. What do we make of a passage that tells us to go in there and to, wipe out everybody? It's fine if we understand it, but then how do we apply it? And so when we come back to God's character and what God is doing for his own glory, we can understand. You shall make no covenant with them, show them no mercy, you shall not intermarry with them. What's he saying? So there's another verse. Let there be no, this is from the New Testament, let there be no sexual immorality, impurity, or greed among you. Such sins have no place among God's people. Obscene stories, foolish talk, and coarse jokes, these are not for you. Instead, let there be thankfulness to God. You can be sure that no immoral, impure, or greedy person will inherit the kingdom of Christ and of God. For a greedy person is an idolater, worshipping the things of this world. Don't be fooled by those who try to excuse these sins, for the anger of God will fall on all who disobey him. You shall not participate in the things these people do. There's a similar idea of integration. Integration is a serious problem for the people of God in Canaan. And for the people of God today, to integrate with the world that is hostile to God is also a serious problem. Now we can do it so much. We can do it so easily. And sometimes we go the other way and take extreme forms to isolate. So we go, make our own little monastery or go Amish or, these attempts to isolate. But it's not about isolation either. So we're somehow in the world. We're still in the world, but we're not of the world. Where we're not mixing it up. We're holding our own. But we are there, still bearing witness and being the light. This is something for us to reflect on because we are so immersed in the world that we live in. Number 2, treasured, loved, and saved by grace. So God says to them, you are a people holy to the Lord your God. He says, you are my treasured possession. And you might remember this verse from last week, but you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation. I can't even read that. What does it say? Possession. People of his own possession. It reflects that something is carried over into from the Old Testament to now as well. God sees his church as precious and treasured. Treasured, loved, and saved by grace. How God views his people, his immense joy in them continues. Lastly, his past faithfulness gives us hope in the future. How can I dispossess them? These nations are greater than I. What does God say? You shall not be afraid. You shall remember what the Lord your God did to Pharaoh and to Egypt. That's what Hebrews says. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he is faithful. We have hope because God continues to be faithful to us. God continues to show us that he can be trusted. And so, part of being church is remembering that faithfulness. That's actually why we do communion, to remember his faithfulness and to proclaim, as we heard in the kids' talk today. It's so easy for us to get caught up in the idea of that's a really strange thing to do for God, to just tell his people to destroy everybody. But to realize that that's not the main idea of the passage. The main idea of the passage is about God leading his people in, telling them not to get mixed with others who are deep in sin, reminding them that he treasures them, that he has chosen them, and giving them confidence because he has been faithful to them through and through. As we go into communion today, let us remember his faithfulness to us through and through, and that our hope will be unwavering as we cling to him. So let us prepare, and we're going to go straight into communion. So